I'd like to take a moment to share with you what I thought was an interesting conversation with a set of new clients. It's my hope that what I share with them is a help to you, the way it was to them. She is 36, he's 33. They have been dating for 16 months. She has a 10-year-old daughter. He has an 8-year-old daughter, both of them from previous relationships, and neither one of them have been married. He started the conversation and said, Doc, I came to you because I am pretty much done with this relationship with her because of her behavior. I said, what's going on and why did it take you 16 months to figure this out? He said, well, it's more to it than that. She's really a horrible mother and I should have saw it coming. I said, and it took you 16 months to figure out that she was a horrible mother? He said, no, Doc, no, it's more to it. When we started dating, we made an agreement not to meet each other's children until after a year of being together. And I thought that was very healthy. I said, okay, now that makes sense. I get that. At least a year. He said, yeah, we, dated a couple of months. We made it official right around month 2 or 3 and decided, we would wait until a year in order, to just be with each other, make sure that it was pretty solid. And then we would introduce each other to the kids. And she eagerly said, yes. I said, you saw that as a problem? He said, not at the time, but I did think, it was just kind of odd. A lot of times he said in his experience, women want to meet children pretty fast, especially if they really like the guy because it's official to them. He said that's been his past experience and he has allowed other women to meet his daughter before. He said, but it all ended in a train wreck and he learned this time, at least wait at least a year. So he tried to do it different. I said, ma'am, is this true? She said, so far he's telling the truth. I said, so what else, sir? What's going on? He said, well, he noticed some red flags that he should not have ignored or should have paid greater attention to. And he's mentioned specifically 3. He said, number 1, she's always dressed to the gods. He said, literally every time they would get together, she was Gucci, Prada down to the socks. His exact words. I started laughing. She just sat there and looked. He said, and I'm cool with that. If that's how you get down, he said, I'm a plain dresser. I don't do a lot. He said, but Doc, she's a school teacher in the country. She's not making Gucci money. I said, have you guys discussed her salary? He said, not directly, not specifically. She interrupted and said, no, I haven't told him how much I made, but I don't make a lot, but I like nice things. I said, well, there's nothing wrong with liking nice things, I guess. I said, sir, do you have a problem that she likes nice things? He said, no, I don't. He said, but it's more to it. He said, that brings me to the second thing. He said, not only is she always Gucci and Prada down to the socks, she never talks about her daughter. I said, never? He said, Doc, maybe 2 conversations in the first year, she even mentioned her daughter. And he said, in hindsight, I should have saw that as weird because I don't have full custody of my daughter. I see my daughter, he said, once every 10 days, 10 days. She has full custody of her daughter, full custody. And every now and then her daughter will go with her parents. If she has to go out of town or if she's traveling or if she's just hanging out or whatever, she can just drop her child off and it's just fine. And he said, I think it's great that she has that support system because I don't really have that support system. Plus, I don't have my daughter regularly, but I have my daughter every other 10 days. And when I get my daughter, it's quality time for me. And so, I can't always go out. I can't always do things, especially during those 10 days. Now, when I don't have her, maybe it's a little bit different, but even still then, I'm busy working and I'm preparing things while she's away so that when she does come back to my house from being at her mom's house, then she has everything that she needs here for us to, cover that week and a half that we have together. He said, and I just found that very odd. He said, and that leads me to number 3. So I'm just sitting here listening. And he said, Doc, she is literally always available. Every time I've ever wanted to hang out with her, she's always available. She never cannot go anywhere, not hang out. He said, I met her at an after party after a concert. And literally every time I've ever wanted to see her, she was either available or within hours, she could make herself available. And he said, Doc, I'm not being judgmental. He said, I'm sure a lot of people may not agree with this. He said, but I just, as a parent that has their child just 10 days, I don't see how people who have their children all the time are able to just get easy free time. It doesn't make sense to me. I said, ma'am, is this all true? She said, it's true. I have really good support from my parents. I've always had really good support from my parents, and they've allowed me to kind of come and go if I need to go places and do different things And so that's never been an issue. I said, well, sir, you say she's always available and she never talks to her daughter or talks about her daughter, and she's always dressed up. I said, have you ever been to her place? Where do you guys hang out? Your place or her place? He said, Doc, it's always at my place. He said, for the first 12 months, we probably met at her place about 5 times. I said, did you observe anything? Did you see the daughter there? He said, no, the daughter wasn't there. He said, and in hindsight, I noticed as I was preparing for this call and thinking about some things that transpired the last 2 to 3 months, he said, the 5 or 6 times that we met over there, her house was spotless. I said, is that a bad thing? He said, no, Doc, it's nothing wrong with your house being spotless. He said, Doc, but just imagine walking into, say, like an Airbnb where there's nothing on the counter, there's nothing on the sink, there's nothing in the cabinets. He said, it almost was like nobody lived there. And he said, at the time, I thought, wow, she's really clean. But I just thought it was odd for some reason, and it made sense later. I said, before you tell me why, I said, ma'am, is this true? She said, it's true. You know, when he came over, it was spotless. And I later told him I hired a cleaning service to come over and do some deep cleaning of my place. And so those times that he came happened to be right around that time. And so my place was looking spotless. The man said, Doc, that's the problem. He said, literally almost a year to the date after they had been dating, I said to her, it's time for us to meet, the kids, right? To get the kids together and us all meet. Is that correct? And she said, sure, no problem. He said, so he happened to actually be in the neighborhood. He said maybe a day or two after a year to the nose. He said, because Doc, something was telling me it wasn't something right. He said, I never thought it was another man. I didn't think it was anything like that. He said, but it was just odd. Something didn't feel right. And so I happened to be in the neighborhood and I had my daughter. And so I called her and I said to her, I'm in the neighborhood with my daughter. I'm going to stop by. I want you to meet her real quick. If your daughter's there, I would love to meet her. I said, what was her response? He said, well, she sounded like she was shocked, as if she was caught off guard. I said, ma'am, is this true? She said, yes, sir, it is, because I was. We had just walked in the house and she was working on some homework, talking about her daughter. And, I would have appreciated if he had given me the heads up. But I popped up at his house before without, letting him know, especially when his daughter wasn't there. So I couldn't really fuss about that. I said, sir, is that true? He said, yes, sir, it is. He said, so I didn't think it would be a big deal. I didn't just roll up. I told her I was in the neighborhood like 2 or 3 minutes away and said we wanted to swing by. He said, so Doc, I went by her place, and when I got there, he said, Doc, she opened the door and the house was a mess. I said, what do you mean like a mess, just dirty? He said, Doc, I've never seen more filth in a house in all of my life. He said, cups, plates, paper, clothes, everywhere. The walls were even looking dirty, and it floored me. I said, what did you say? He said, I looked at her and said, what's going on? Did somebody break in? I started chuckling, and I said, ma'am, is this true? She said, yes, sir, it is. He's telling the truth. And he interrupted and said, I just really could not believe that her house was as filthy as it was. He said her daughter came around the corner. She introduced her daughter. I said, how did the daughter appear? He said, her daughter is a very pretty girl, but her daughter even had dirty looking clothes. I said, ma'am, is this true? I said, sir, what do you mean by dirty looking clothes? He said, Doc, I'm not being judgmental. I told her this. He said, all the Gucci and the Prada that I see her in, I just expected her daughter to look a little bit better. And he said, I'm not being offensive. I'm not calling her ugly. I wasn't calling her ugly. In fact, we get along to this day. We hit it off great. I'm great with kids. But her daughter did not look like the Gucci and the Prada that my girlfriend wears. I said, ma'am, is this true? She said, I guess so. If he wants to paint it that way, I just don't believe you buy Gucci and Prada for children. I said, well, I can understand that. I don't think if children have Gucci and Prada jobs, then they don't need to wear Gucci and Prada shoes. I understand that. I said, but ma'am, do your children look clean? Do you present your children as clean? She said, Doc, I can't believe you're asking me that. I said, ma'am, I can't believe he's describing your house this way. So do you take care of your children? Are your children clean and presentable? He stopped, looked at her, and just kind of folded his arms as if he knew the answer. She didn't say anything. He said, Doc, I will interject since she's not answering. He said for the next 2 to 3 months, which led us up to this call, we literally have been going back and forth. He said, because Doc, I can't get it out of my mind. I can't get out of my mind that I met this lady and her child looks the way she does. But this woman is always dressed to the gods. She always looks good when she comes out of the house when I'm around her. But it just feels like she's not taking care of her children. And that's a big problem for me. I said, all right. I said, all right. I said, ma'am, sir, I have a friend that's a realtor, and she and I a couple of months ago were laughing about her first sale that she made. She's doing really well now. But the first sale that she made about a year or so ago, and she talked about how she was referred to this gentleman who wanted her to sell his house. You know, he had heard that she had just got or received her license, and he wanted to give her a chance to try to sell it. And so he sent all of these pictures. And so my friend was telling me, yeah, Doc, you know, he sent these pictures, and I looked at the outside of the house and I was like, oh my God, this is going to be easy to sell. I mean, the house was beautiful. And she said, because Doc, I was so green, I was just, you know, already making plans, you know, how much I'm going to sell it for, what my commission is going to be, all of this stuff. So she sets up a time to go by and take a look at the house and meet the guy. And she said, when she walked in the house, there was trash everywhere. There was dog feces. There was stuff all over the walls. The floors were cracked. The curtains were torn. The carpet had all kinds of stains in it. She said she could not believe that this was the same house. The lady's just looking at me on the call, my client. The man is looking at me. He folds his arm and says, Doc, I know exactly where you're going. I said, I need y'all to understand this, that the outside of that house was spotless, but the inside of that house was a mess. And here's my simple rule of thumb. There's a lot of narrative that supports this idea, or rather that purports this idea, that people with kids should not be dated. I think it's baloney. That if you take care of your kids, you have a right to be happy and to meet a suitable mate just like anybody else. I said, but there is one exception. I said, ma'am, a legit reason not to date a person with kids is if you date a person who does not take care of their kids. I said, ma'am, there is no reason. And you can call it judgmental. You can call it what you want to. But there is no reason you should have Gucci and Prada on your back, but the inside of your house looks like a swap meet. It doesn't make sense. And neither does it make sense that your child, your daughter, does not look as acceptable as you do. And I said, ma'am, this is not to insult your daughter. This is not a vendetta against your daughter. This is a vendetta against parenting. I said, ma'am, we cannot prioritize everything but our children. And this is one of the fundamental problems with parenting today. I said it is possible to be a fun girlfriend, a fun boyfriend, but to be a poor mother and to be a poor father. I said, and if you are a poor mother and a poor father, you will look great on somebody's arm, but you will be a horrible caregiver. I said, ma'am, you need to take care of your kids. He said, Doc, that's my whole point, to the point where I'm just thinking about ending the relationship. I said, what have you decided to do? He said, I'm not sure. How can I decide? She began to tear up on the call. I said, what you can do is evaluate this relationship against your values and ask yourself, does she align with the values you're looking for in a mate? I said, because, sir, I'll commend you. I said, from everything that she said on the call, though she didn't say much, you're a great father. And I think the expectation should be that she shows up the same. And this is the knock on bad parenting. When you are a good parent and you hear narratives like parents don't deserve to be able to date, or single parents don't deserve to be able to have good mates, it really angers you because some of us are solid parents. I said, but ma'am, if you're wearing your money, if you're traveling with your money, but you're not taking care of your money in terms of your home and your children, you are a person that absolutely does not qualify for a good mate. So they really did some soul searching. We did 2 or 3 more sessions after that and had some hard conversations. And they landed on what I think was very viable for them. And that is, she decided she needed to take some time to get her finances together so that she can give more attention to her child and more attention to how she's raising her child and how she is living in terms of their standards of living. And they have decided to remain friends until she can make some adjustments, and then they may give it a shot again. And I think it was the appropriate decision. I hope this story made sense. If it did, type church in the comments with 3 R's. And then remember, you've got 2 jobs. 1, be better today than what you were yesterday. And 2, don't forget what I told you. What's up, everybody? This is Dr. Zeb. Listen, I've been dying to make this announcement for a very long time now, and I'm pleased to say that Inspire Nation has officially launched. Yes, we finally got a Facebook and YouTube community group where we're going to have exclusive content, exclusive shorts, exclusive discussion prompts, where we're going to engage with other people literally around the world who are on the same healing journey that we're on. I need you to go find these pages right now on Facebook and YouTube. Inspire Nation, follow the page, join the group, introduce yourself, and be prepared to link up with literally thousands of people around the world who are on the same healing journey, who are looking for the same resources, and who want to also be surrounded with other like-minded individuals who are growing in the same direction as you are. I'm so excited about this because it's the beginning of some great things I can't talk about right now. Listen, you got two jobs. One, be better today than what you were yesterday. And two, don't forget what I told you.